Hey everyone, this is Gravity Balmain and this is the 5 Elements of Vogue. Today we're going to be going in depth on how to do a catwalk. So catwalks are one of the 5 elements of Vogue Femme. Basically a catwalk is like a very stylized, very feminine walk that occurs on kind of a mid-level, and it really serves the purpose of being the main mobility element. In other words, it's what kind of allows you as a voguer to navigate the stage, to navigate the space. In a ballroom context, generally speaking, stages are either a T shape or like a long rectangle. And in either case, the catwalk is really what allows you to get around that stage, to get around your opponents, to go up to the judges, and to get to all the judges and show them what you have. There's a lot of different types of catwalks, but let's start by learning how to do a basic catwalk. So a basic catwalk really has 4 main components: the level, the hips, the arms, and the walk itself. Let's break that down. So first, the level. What I mean by the level is the level that the catwalk occurs at. Catwalks should always occur at kind of a mid-level. A great tip that I was taught by my father, Jamari Balmain, on how to do the correct level for a catwalk is to place your hand on your shoulder like so and drop so that the top of your head is in line with that hand. And that's generally the level that you should be at for a catwalk. This level is really going to enable the rest of the catwalk in the sense that it gives you space in the hips to create that kind of exaggerated feminine movement. The second part of a basic catwalk is the hips. The hips are really the crux of a catwalk. It's kind of the most important part. And generally speaking, you want to think about these extreme motions to the upper left and the upper right swaying in your hips in that low level. A great way to practice starting out is to just hold the extreme part of that position. So pushing your hip all the way up into the left, into the corner of the room, and just holding it there for 15-20 seconds and getting your body used to it and getting that muscle memory in place so that when you try and actually do a catwalk, you already have that muscle memory. Once you're comfortable with that, I also recommend swaying back and forth, just standing still in that low position to get your body used to kind of the rhythm of the hips. That's really going to center and ground your entire catwalk. The third part of a basic catwalk is the arms. A lot of people think that this is the most important part, but really this is just kind of the extra decorative part that's really going to add variation to your catwalk and add kind of a different energy. You could do a great catwalk with no hands at all. But generally speaking, the easiest way to do catwalk arms is to remember the rule of opposition. That means that if your left foot is going forward or your left hip is coming out, your right hand should be going out as well. And likewise, if your right leg is going down or your right hip is coming out, your left leg should be out. Your left arm should be out, excuse me. But generally speaking, a lot of people like to teach kind of this very triangular boxy thing to start off, or they like to teach touching the elbows for a basic catwalk. I find that without experience, those catwalks can look really stiff and really unstructured. So the way I like to teach starting out is to just swish the hands to the left and to the right, but keeping that opposite hand in front, and always remembering that rule of opposition. The fourth part of a basic catwalk is the walk itself. The key rule for this is really to go in a straight line. You don't want to be crossing over a lot, and you also don't want to have a wide stance. Imagine that there's a tightrope going across a chasm, and you're stepping one foot in front of the other on your toes, and that's really going to give you the energy, and it's going to make the hips look correct. It's also important to add a slight twist in your feet, but not too much. You don't want it to look like it's your feet doing the work. It really should be mostly centered in your hip. Now that we know how to do a basic catwalk, let's do a full 8 count of straight catwalk. Now that you know how to do a basic catwalk, let's get into some variations that you can use to make your catwalk unique and your own. So the first place you can add variation in your catwalks is in the rhythm. What I mean by that is that you can match kind of the beat and the noises and the instruments that are going on in the beat with the rhythm of your catwalk, and you can alter from just the simple 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 2 really main ways to do this. The first way would be to speed things up, obviously, and the second is to slow things down. Slowing things down is really, really simple. It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. Instead of stepping on every beat, you step on every other beat, and you really kind of draw out the entire motion of the catwalk to really make it kind of smooth and flowy and sort of unctuous. This slowness is really going to match well to kind of long, drawn-out sounds or very dramatic sounds, and it's really going to add a sort of tension and anticipation to your movement. On the other hand, there's a few ways to speed up your catwalk. The most obvious is to simply double everything, to step left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right on the and counts, but sometimes that's kind of hard to do, and also sometimes it doesn't necessarily look as seamless doing it a long time. So the other thing you can do is to do basically left, right, left, right, left, but to do it in place. What I mean by in place is that your feet aren't actually switching positions, they're just stepping in the same position, and you're essentially frozen in that catwalk, but walking on a double time. You can either do that just for 3 catwalks, or you could do it for an entire 8 count, whatever you want. Adding these speed variations to your catwalk is really going to help connect you to the music and set you apart from other people. It's going to show that you're listening, it's going to show that you're adapting to the commentation and to the beat. The second place you can add variation in your catwalk is in the arms. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to show you a few different types of arms that I like to use in my catwalk. With arms, really the main thing to remember is just opposition. You never want to have same arm, same leg. In some cases, you can get away with doing the same thing with both arms at the same time with symmetry, but you never, never, never want to break that rule of opposition otherwise. The final place that's really easy to add variation for catwalk is in accenting the crashes. This is kind of similar to the rhythm in that you're matching the beat, but for here you're matching the crashes. What a crash is the loud noise that happens on the 4 and the 8 of a lot of different Vogue beats. This crash is kind of fundamental to the entire style of the music and the dance, and adding things in your catwalk that accent that crash is really going to set it apart, and it's going to stay connected to the music. So a few ideas for things to do would be to kick on the 4 and the 8, or to reverse direction on the 4 and the 8, or to reverse momentum on the 4 and the 8, just things that signify a change. That's really going to tie you again to the beat and specifically to those crashes, and it's going to structure your entire performance. So now that we know the basics of how to catwalk and a few variations for how to spice things up, let's talk about a few tips and tricks that are really important to remember when we're catwalking. The first thing is to not neglect the basics. I know it's super tempting to get sucked into the world of all these variations and all these cool things you can do, and it's super important to play with those and explore those, but it's equally as important to do the basics. It honestly took me a year or 2 for my basic catwalk to get to a point that I was really comfortable with it, and sometimes it's very tempting to cover up the fact that you're not fully comfortable with the movement with a lot of flashy things, but it's really, really important that you consistently practice the basics and perfect that first. The second tip that's really important to remember is to even out the sides. For me, I realized a while ago that I was favoring my left side quite a lot in my catwalk. I would always start on my left foot, my left hip would come out further than my right hip, and overall I was doing a lot more kind of variations and things always on the left side. That doesn't maybe seem like a problem, but what I realized is that I was caught on the wrong foot, my body wouldn't even know what to do. And my catwalk itself looked a little bit imbalanced because I was shifting so much more on one side than I was on the other. So really, it's important that anything you practice, any variation you practice it on the left side and on the right side too. It's really going to even everything out, and it's going to make you more able to adapt in those freestyle, in those ballroom scenarios. The third tip is that sometimes simpler is better. I know I taught you all these variations, and they can be really, really fun and really, really useful, but sometimes the most effective way to catwalk is to just do a straight catwalk down the center of the runway. Some of the most iconic moments that I can think of are exactly that. My final tip for catwalks is to really make it your own. It's really, really important for every element to have uniqueness and individuality, but catwalks are really what's going to set the rest of your performance up. And if your catwalk is something that only you do, or something that only you do so well, then it's really going to set you apart and it's going to immediately make an impact. There's a lot of people who I immediately think of when I think of catwalks. I think of Star Revlon. I think of Kevin Jay-Z Prodigy. I think of a specific catwalk that I saw from Aya Ninja once, and like all of those moments stick in my head because of how unique, because of how individual they were, and because of how they added their own spin on things. And I'll add links to those down below, but it's really, really important that you kind of develop that too, especially as you get more comfortable with the basics. Finding that unique voice is really going to set you apart from other performers. Thank you all for watching this tutorial. My goal with these videos really is to create a set of accessible and decent quality Vogue videos out there that people who maybe have less access to a ballroom scene can learn from and ask questions and things like that. If you do want to support me in that goal, my payment links are down below, and I've also linked a number of charities that focus on Black trans women. Without Black trans women, we would not have Vogue Femme, we would not have the ballroom scene. So it's super, super important that we remember that and give back to those communities as well. That said, also if you want to take more classes from me, I do have Vimeo links in the description. My Vimeo classes are $5, but if payment is an issue, you can DM me and I will give you a free access code. I do my best to be as responsive on that as possible. And if you do have local ballroom scenes in your area or people from the ballroom scene who teach Vogue, I highly encourage you to take their classes. Learning from as many teachers as possible is really, really important, and it's going to give you a well-rounded style and a well-rounded background for you to create your own style from. If you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to respond to them. If you want to see more content like this and see the rest of the series as I release it, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and my other socials will also be linked down below. Thank you.